All right, welcome to Tougies Take, episode 48. The episode where we invent things to talk about.
Welcome to the off season, everybody.
Let's talk about the polarizing events that are dividing the Seattle Kraken locker room. I don't know. We're inventing things to talk about.
That's what everybody else does, so what's the big deal?
All right.
Just makes us official.
Does. Yeah, that's the key. So, as we are slowly turning into a football podcast,
Yes.
I decided that maybe we should explore some of the origins of football, some of the early tales from eras long gone, like pre-Super Bowl era football. Because if you go back and read about these things...
Did you watch Ken Burns' football? Is that a thing?
If it was a thing, you would not hear from me for like 23 hours. It'd be like, what's Deej up to? And be like, learning. I
still remember when you went through and watched Ken Burns' baseball. And yeah, that was
like Philadelphia,
that was an interesting
town ball.
time. It's just like, I haven't left my couch.
I lived off of I was a bachelor at the time, living a very strange life. I was just living off popcorners and watching Ken Burns' baseball. It's like as all great students of the game do. So I decided to kind of look up some stories, right? From the original era of football. So, did you know you can trace football back significantly further, into BC, which I did not realize?
I mean, in terms of people throwing an object around for the sake of a game.
With the standard, so what they define as the roots of football is a game where a ball is thrown over people's heads and tackling is the way to either remove the ball from their hands or to end the play.
I mean, so what else did you have to do at the time?
All right. Well, a lot. So anyway, so the very first version of football that they can track down is called Episkairos. And it was invented by this civilization of people as we begin the warmies.
It sounds Greek.
It is Greek. It's very Greek. The ancient Greeks,
very Greek. Yeah.
They invented the football.
It's coming home.
And I debated asking this question first, but just for me, I thought it was a little bit funnier to ask it second. For those of you at home that have no idea what we're talking about, England and most European countries refer to American football as this. Hint, it's not American football.
Gridiron.
That is correct. Do you know why?
No. No idea.
Because it looks like a grill, which they call gridirons.
What, the field?
Yeah, because of the hash marks.
So, yeah. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Right?
But incredible.
I mean, a lot of writtish stuff's really weird like that, though, right? Where they just it kind of looks like this, so we call it that. Why is a phone booth called a trolley or whatever? Or why is the president called a queen? No one knows. I don't know. England, they'll do whatever.
God.
So, do you care to take a guess as when the very first game of modern football was played? And this is when you were allowed to do the forward pass, a down is down. And actually what's weird is one of the things they used to identify it is there were actual hash marks on the field for yard lines.
I feel like it was super late, 1800s in college.
So what's interesting is the 1800s is when college football started, organized football. So that's when they consider the birth of organized football. But the first game of modern football as it exists today was apparently in 1932. Doesn't that seem significantly later than you would otherwise imagine? So I guess the hash marks was the big thing because of the painting. That
the NHL was already 8 years old. At least the
it was almost ready to vote.
Incarnation. Basketball was already around for decades at that point, I think, too. So yeah, that's late as hell.
Yeah. And then what's really interesting too is so really like hash marks and like playing games indoors. So indoors was another thing that started that year in 32, which is crazy. It's really interesting to think they were like that style of game was really only around for 34 years before the 1966 like NFL AFC merger with the birth of the Super Bowl. So really,
so basically, the evolution of football happened very fast. And the
game hasn't really been around
to
that
other
long.
Sports.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, right?
A little bit, yeah.
So
I wonder why though, because it's not as if it's a difficult game. Like, did they struggle like just to get the idea of getting people to convert from rugby to this newfangled game? Like, I wonder what the hesitation was in getting the sport to kind of take off.
I don't know. I think maybe it's because like the game is kind of like chess, right? Where anybody can pick up chess in 30 minutes, but the subsets of rules become so infinitely complicated that it was probably difficult for them to consolidate them. I don't know. Because you got to imagine, like, you grow up playing in Ohio and then you go to Northern California and you're like, what the fuck is this? Like, they're like doing passes backwards. They got these huge dudes that they're feeding chunky soup. They're blocking people. What is this? I don't know. So, okay. So the origins of the NFL.
I just like the definition. Like even today, like modern offensive line, like, I don't know, man. They're just huge dudes eating chunky soup all the time. It's tough to move.
It's like we went to Harvard and we found some giants. It's like,
oh, it's delightful.
So what's interesting too is the way the playoffs were structured. Before it was very much like the English Premier League, where you have the best record at the end. Congratulations.
Yeah.
So 1932 also heralded, the first playoff game, right? Where they had playoffs. It was the Chicago Bears versus the Portsmouth Spartans. Ooh. And they were tied at the end of the season. There were no tiebreakers, so they had to hold the first playoff game. And everyone was like, this is the greatest thing that has ever happened. It's like, let's stop doing regular sports. Somebody tell England about this. And then that guy just went home. So
he never came back.
He just never went. He just never told them. He forgot. So I think that's exciting. So the reason I set that up, that there were no playoffs, is because I have to ask this question about 1926. And this is my favorite thing in the history of early days of football.
That's the most used sentence of all time. I have to. Just, sorry, continue.
So in 1926, there were actually 3 teams that all had rightful claims to the championship based on the record.
Okay.
And they had to go through each team. And one team actually ended up having the ability to win the championship taken away from them because of something they did. But then they ended up with the championship because the other 2 teams screwed up too. But they were the first team to be punished. And this team was called the Chicago Cardinals. And they played a game against the Milwaukee Badgers. So the Chicago Cardinals were stripped of their ability.
Not a team anymore.
The Chicago Cardinals professional football team was stripped of their ability to win the title.
Yes.
Because their coach hired this. Just take a wild guess, because the answer is so amazing.
First and foremost, I need to shell out my knowledge that the Chicago Cardinals became the Arizona Cardinals, and they're like the longest tenured sports team in North America, or at least one of them.
Yeah,
shell that out so I sound smart when I get this wrong. Am I off base to say an analytics department?
That would have been amazing. And that sends you straight to Wendy's. So one of the reasons this is so funny is the coach of the Chicago Cardinals.
Yes.
He hired a group of high school students to pose as the Milwaukee Badgers so that he could guarantee his team a win. And he just destroyed those high school students.
I mean, I think you just got to give him the win at that point. You know?
You would think.
I mean, that is genius. Because
right?
even to this day, it's unbelievable that the Milwaukee Badgers ever existed.
Yeah, they were a real team too. He was like, yeah, don't show up. We have an idea.
How would you know, right? Especially
exactly. It was one of those things where I don't know. It's difficult to wrap my head around how funny this is because it's just really
it's the basis for a shitty C-level comedy.
Starring Keanu Reeves?
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
I don't know. If you go back through time, through the, like, I guess they called it the American Professional Football Association was the original, like the original pro league.
Mm-hmm.
And my God, are there some names in there? Like, one of my favorite is the Hammond Professionals. So it's just,
I mean, we do have a history of looking through old sports leagues and being like, what's the silliest name?
I mean, you get the Dayton Triangles.
The Triangles.
The Triangles. Or the Decatur Stanleys, which are now the Chicago Bears, fun fact. Or my personal favorite of all of these, and they didn't ever become a different team, which is upsetting, but they were called the Rochester Jeffersons. Go Jeffs! I don't know. So that does it for today's Warmies. I'm sure there's more stories in here that are on par with hiring a team of high schoolers, beating them, having the championship stripped away from you, and then eventually being awarded the championship because the other two teams were equally shady.
I just can't get over Can the title of the episode be Go Jeffs?
Go Jeffs, yeah, 100%. Can you imagine just being like a bunch of like beat up 17-year-olds? Like there's no helmets, like your arm's broken, you're like missing teeth, like you've got to go work in the mill before math class or whatever, where they teach you how to add for the first time. And you're just like, it's okay, kids, we lost to the champs.
Oh my God. Welcome to the show, everybody. Be prepared for a month and a half more of this.
Right? Just wait until we explore the history of Mark Summers and Double Dare.
Ooh. All right. Welcome to our Nickelodeon-themed episode. If minor league teams get to have a Nick night, we get to have a Nick night, damn it.
Yeah.
Delightful.
Well, I don't know. I think that brings us to the advertisement section.
Yeah, I think so. I hope you all enjoyed the intro that we hopefully remembered to put in. Yeah, everybody, as per usual, this show, our show, your show, because you help make the show what it is. A big thank you, of course, to our now longtime sponsor, our friends at Manscaped, who would like to remind you that you can get 20% off of your order, free worldwide shipping, when you use code Tougie at checkout. Again, manscaped.com. Pick up yourself the incredible Lawnmower 4.0. Pick up yourself one of these bad boys. If you're watching on YouTube on the Tougies Take podcast channel, link in the description, of course, everywhere. You can find it. Subscribe. Get us to 1,000 subscribers, please, as soon as possible. Thank you very much. Again, the Ultra Smooth package is there. There's so much, Deej. There's so much. You want a shirt that says your balls will thank you that your girlfriend won't let you wear in public like me? Manscaped.com.
Yeah, exactly. Your balls will thank you. We are now on the Tougies podcast channel. It's coming up. Reruns of Full House. It's like after the Tougies Take show. Fake original programming. That's what I'm about. And speaking of original programming, now's the intro.
Oh, there we go.
Out of nowhere.
This is the intro now. This is the intro now. This is the intro now. It sounds good.
All right, now we're back. We have questions.
I think we should play the intro twice. We need to fill for time. We don't have a limit on this show, but it's the off season. We got nothing to talk about for the most part, except to take some lovely viewer questions from all of you. Indeed, the actual hockey talk segment for us here is very short today, so we have jam-packed this show full of viewer questions, and there is no better way to start, no better person to start with than one Mr. Richard Head 93, who asks, Neopets or Club Penguin?
I mean, I feel like the answer to this is incredibly obvious, and I think as somebody who likes to think of himself as a member of high society, who has frequented several nighttime establishments, I'm going to say that I'm a proud member of Club Penguin.
That would be my answer as well, but I never saw the appeal of either.
There's no bottle service at Neopets.
Like, I never saw the appeal of either. It's like, okay, I look back and it's like, what was like 4th grade, 5th grade Tougie playing? Fucking RuneScape. I didn't have time for Neopets. And then what the hell was middle school Tougie playing? Well, because he was the most popular kid. That was my
Club
Warcraft
Penguin.
phase in like 7th grade. It was a great time. And then after that, Neopets, Club Penguin, fuck no. I'd get home from school and play EASHL until my fingers bled. I didn't have time.
I never played either of them. Full disclosure.
My priorities.
I had to Google Neopets real quick, but I was like, Club Penguin, I'm about it. I'll run with it like it's a real club.
God damn. I want to talk about being a goddamn nerd. The king of the nerds.
I played Command and Conquer.
Well, no, dude, I got something that can top Command and Conquer. Are you aware of the world of wrestling e-feds? Because I got you beat.
I mean, I don't do drugs.
It would have
I don't know
helped.
what a wrestling e-fed is.
Jesus Christ. It's what it sounds like. It's just a bunch of wrestling nerds making up a character.
That sounds fun.
Writing out promos for it's basically fucking Dungeons and Dragons for wrestling fans.
It seems to me like it's very similar to like developing a fursona, but with significantly less layers of clothing
and more baby oil. Yes. So it was a hell of a time. That was 8th grade, 9th grade me, who also used that as a way to get better in terms of writing and also web design at the time. So it was a good time.
You want to tell us about some of your characters?
And would you believe it? Would you believe it? I still had sex in high school.
What you talking about?
It's a fucking miracle to this day. I still can't believe it. And no, because I don't remember.
Don't remember any characters.
I've blanked out a lot. I wasn't creative for the most part, though, in terms of the characters. I'm just like, fuck it, fucking, I don't know. Like, it's.
To be fair, though, not a lot of people know this about you, but you were actually homecoming king in high school because there were only 4 people in your graduating class of upstate Maine. Captain of the football team. It was like homecoming king, like valedictorian.
God, it was
only 4 people.
It was a good time. It was a damn good time. Next question here for the hell of it from one Diet Coco. And actually, you know what? Diet Coco will come back to you in a second because I just got something on Twitter. This is at Guy from Boston. Guy from BOS on Twitter. Good old Dennis. Not a hockey question, but what would your Mount Rushmore of pizza toppings be? Mine are pineapple, sausage, peppers, and extra cheese. DH. Your Mount Rushmore of pizza topping.
So, like, that's like 4 things, right? Yes. Like, is that, like, yeah, so there has to be 4 things? That's that's like what the unit measurement a Mount Rushmore is?
Yes.
Like, get me a Mount Rushmore of milks. And it's like, well, here's 2% skim milk, whole milk, half an. Okay, I get it. So I'm a big fan of roasted red peppers. I like to put tomato on pizza, even though there's already sauce of tomato. I like basil.
Huh?
And then I'm a big fan of pineapple, but it's not like an everyday pizza topping, but it is
Agreed.
a complementary flavor to the acidic taste of tomato.
See, in terms of that debate, I am fine with pineapple on pizza. Is it like my go-to? No, I can't even remember the last time I had it. If it's in front of me, I'm eating it though.
Yeah, nobody that's ever eaten it is like, this is gross. Like everybody that's like, this is gross has never touched it.
I agree.
And that's why they're wrong.
Agreed. So is that 4 for you?
Yeah, so I had roasted red peppers, tomatoes, I had the basil, and then the pineapple.
Okay. I'm about to basic bitch this really quickly. First and foremost. I mean, Dennis had extra cheese on his, for God's sake. Number one, any disrespect to just plain old pepperoni is flat out disrespectful. I will not allow pepperoni disrespect here. I won't.
Pepperoni disrespect.
That might have to be the name of the episode instead.
It's like Pepperoni Disrespect was the wrestler I created in middle school.
I wish it was. Oh my God. All right. If the next WWE game isn't shit, I'm starting up an EFED again.
Disrespect.
And I will be Pepperoni Disrespect. That is admittedly the one thing that I want. Back in the day, I'll have to link you this video too, but Rooster Teeth on their Let's Play channel, they would all have the guys make a custom character on WWE, and then they'd all, go through a couple of matches and everything. I want to do that so badly. Get like you, Deke Slayer, Crash Andrews, all the fellas.
Oh, we could like cut
and just everyone
and
makes their own character, and we just fucking go for it.
That actually sounds amazing.
It does. So we're gonna have to do that one of these days.
You could call it VM Connected. That's a home run. It's not getting better than that today.
The ideas are flowing. So pepperoni, bacon. You gotta go. Call it meatball. Call it hamburger. Call it what you want. And God, a fourth is tough. Yeah, pepperoni, bacon, meatball. Again, big fan of the old meat lovers. I'm not a big fan of putting like vegetables.
It's like pepperoni, bacon, meatball, steak.
Well, it's like I'm not a fan of peppers. I'm not a big fan of like mushrooms or onion or anything like that. I mean, fuck it. Let's go ham. Let's go the holy. It can't be the Holy Trinity. The Mount Rushmore of meats.
It's like all 4 pork products. I do think you can't say extra cheese, though. Extra cheese is not a topping. It's an instruction. I think that's important.
He's not wrong, Dennis. He's not wrong. I'm sorry. He's got you there. We'll get back on track. This is already one of my favorite shows ever. This comes from One Diet Coco. Has one player ever affected the offseason strategy of a team more than Tom Wilson has for the New York Rangers?
Yes.
That's the first part of the question. Has anybody affected the offseason strategy of a team more?
I think my answer might lose us some viewers.
Go ahead.
Mark Messier.
In what way? Mark Messier is affected more than Tom Wilson has.
Yeah, or like in Vancouver, where he just completely affected their offseason strategy that one year.
Well, see, Mark Messier's got a history of this, though.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, in terms of, like, fucking things up for the Canucks, but also, Mark Messier had a really big hand, I feel, in terms of, along with Tom Wilson, affecting the New York Rangers. Because, again, Mark Messier essentially called the New York Rangers team from last season pussies. Like, let's call a spade a spade. That's basically what he called the entire team when Tom Wilson and all that shit was going on. So Mark Messier's got a decent history of it. I'll shout out the 2011 Boston Bruins for ruining the Vancouver Canucks. I think we all know that's true in terms of what Marchand and not so much Bergeron, but Marchand, Lucic, and the likes. Again, it was a very physical series. I know a lot of Canucks fans are still very unhappy in regards to certain players on that 2011 Bruins team, but nobody can deny in the aftermath of that, the Canucks, instead of just being what they were and one win away from a cup final, said, well, we have to be the Bruins and be better at being the Bruins than the Bruins. And let's see, Vancouver Canucks seasons. How many times have the Vancouver Canucks made the playoffs since 2011? And the answer is only a couple. Let's see. The next season, they lost in the quarterfinals to the Kings in 5. Lost to the Sharks in a sweep. Didn't qualify. Lost in the first round to lost in the first round to Calgary. Didn't qualify. Didn't qualify. Didn't qualify. Didn't qualify. Made the second round in the bubble and then didn't qualify this year. So that's one that comes to mind. And I'm sure Wayne Gretzky also changed a lot of team strategies, and it didn't work at all because you couldn't stop Wayne. So those are just some instances that come to mind.
Yeah. I would say, I mean, this year, I mean, obviously, I don't think they're entirely playing around Tom Wilson. It's just weird to me that incident is just like, has absolutely just taken over the lives of New York's front office.
Well, see, I don't think, in terms of changing the strategy, I mean, how much have the Rangers really changed in terms of making moves that they wouldn't have made otherwise? You know?
Yeah.
Because like, aside from Ryan Reeves, what have they done that they wouldn't have done otherwise? I don't think there's really anything there. And getting Ryan Reeves for the fourth line isn't like this franchise-altering move that can seriously disrupt the team. Like, yeah, he's overpaid and immediately got an extension before playing a game for the team, but I don't view it as like this franchise destroying change of direction.
I don't either. To me, it's like akin to like, oh man, we're not that tough of a team. We're like, essentially they have to resod their entire yard, so they just bought a cactus. That's like that to me is like very similar to what happened here.
I have nothing to add to that. Second part of his question, how do we feel about the role of enforcers in today's game? It's tough, obviously. You know, we've had that debate where I think as hockey fans, with fighting having been a part of the sport, you know, and with us being human beings and our monkey brains being like, ooh, violence. Can't look away from the car accident.
Violence.
I mean, there's, you know, I think there's always going to be a part of me that's like, ooh, hockey fight. Especially when it's like, hey, two willing combatants. Like, I'm a boxing fan. I'm a mixed martial arts fan. I'm a fan of hockey fights. In terms of, again, as long as it's willing combatants and somebody doesn't sucker punch somebody, Tom Wilson. But on the flip side, of course, we also know that it's not necessarily a part of the sport because it's a penalty. And there's that whole debate, and then you get into the CTE side of things. So, again, the whole place of hockey fights in the sport and whether or not it should be a thing, it's an entirely different discussion. But as long as it is a thing, I do think there is some credibility to the train of thought that, you know, maybe if you know that there's a guy out there who's not going to be afraid to jump you, you don't take liberties with star players. But also on the flip side, there's the other school of thought, and I agree with this wholeheartedly. If you have to play somebody, say, a goon next to Connor McDavid, you are actively hurting your team's chances because you're not putting somebody on the ice that can keep up with Connor McDavid and contribute positively on the score sheet. Or if your top line's out there and Connor gets hurt, you're going to respond by putting your fourth liners out there. It's one of those things where there's a lot of positives and negatives to it.
Yeah. I think I think if I'm able to take the ethical considerations out of the question, right, and just make it purely practical, I think being an enforcer has to be part of a larger skill set. It can't just be your one role anymore. I think
agree.
it's very difficult for if you look at guys that I would say are the last pure enforcers in the NHL right now, like guys like Curtis Gabriel or like Michael Haley. I don't even know if he was on a team last year.
Like Ross Johnston on the Islanders comes to mind.
Yeah, when you take a guy like Ryan Reeves, he has a larger skill set. He's not just there to punch people. I mean, although that is a large part of his skill set, but he's not a guy that skates for 2 minutes a night, scores 1 goal every 3 seasons, I don't think. Yeah, I think the way the NHL is paced, you just can't exist like that anymore.
That's fair. I would agree. I don't think he's an outright solely an enforcer type, but he's also not what Milan Lucic was in his prime.
Correct. Yeah, 100%.
Which is what you would want.
He's much closer to Curtis Gabriel than he is like a Tom Wilson or an Evander Kane.
Yeah, that's fair. Although, when you mention Evander Kane, I don't think people mention the fighting skill anymore.
Yeah.
So, I mean, enforcers, again, as long as fighting is still in the game, they have a place, but also you can clearly see some negatives to the train of thought where it's like, how much of a positive even is this for your team, instead of having guys that aren't going to be afraid to step up and defend themselves at all times. Easier said than done. Obviously, some skill guys, aren't going to be willing to sit there and fight. But the idea, too, of there's a reason why certain guys, there's a reason why someone like Barclay Goodrow got paid what he did. A little bit more valuable than some other, just outright enforcers.
Yeah.
Next question, unless you got something else.
No.
Comes from Emily, the goalie. How does Lou Lamoriello keep getting away with these team-friendly deals? Is he actually a mob boss? A couple of people asked this, so we will direct to one of our talking points from General Hockey Talk. We might as well just weave it in here now. The New York Islanders re-signed defenseman Adam Pelech. 8 years at $5.75. Honestly, the initial thought, pretty damn good deal. I mean, obviously, the 8-year term is what really drives down the money, especially when, there's someone like a Habs fan on Twitter also asked, why is the D market broken? We'll talk about the Nurse deal in a minute as well, but you look at the Nurse deal, you look at the Seth Jones deal, it is surprising that somebody like Pelech, who, and in terms of being an advanced stats darling, is incredible. In terms of a play driving defenseman, he's fantastic. So for somebody like that to get under $6 million per is a fantastic deal. The question of how does Lou Lamoriello keep getting away with it? I think it's just team buy-in, especially with the coaching of Barry Trotz. I mean, once Johnny Boychuk goes on LTIR, they'll have just under $18 million. And they'll be looking to re-sign Beauvillier and Sorokin, who are RFAs. And then they're likely to bring back Palmieri and Cizikas. I can't imagine those two aren't coming back, considering they haven't signed elsewhere yet. And Zach Parise is still on the market. So it seems to me, Deej, that $18 million is going to Beauvillier, Sorokin, Palmieri, Cizikas, and Parise. And at that point, the Islanders have a lot better of an outlook than what we discussed on the last episode when you talk about some of the players that right now aren't projected to be on that roster because they're not under contract.
Yeah, absolutely. I still have no idea how Lamoriello is going to fit this puzzle together. I do need to say that with an emphatic exclamation point, but I feel this is a big part of that. I mean, 5.75 is pretty good for Adam Pelech in this D market, in my opinion.
Really good. Really, really good. I mean, I'd be ecstatic if I was an Islanders fan. And I mean, again, that's kind of what you need is somebody like Pelech to take less.
It's a reason to celebrate. That's what the Islanders fans need.
It's true. I mean, it helps, right? Like, you get a contract like that, and then you look at like Matt Martin and Cal Clutterbuck, and you're like, well, this is an easier pill to swallow. So you kind of need that level of team buy-in, all things considered. So, yeah, general thoughts on that deal. It's fantastic for the Islanders, and I think they have the money to get everybody that they want to get, and they're going to be right back in that conversation in terms of being a contender in the Eastern Conference again.
Yeah.
So, Deej, 2 more football questions here. We talked a lot about football already.
Football question.
We're going to continue to talk about football. Killer Socks with a real deep question here, as he just says, Josh Allen? That was it. Josh Allen. Josh Allen, this morning, signed a massive new contract. $150 million guaranteed, which, again, for the Pagulas as well, handing out a decent amount of money while they're continuing to essentially panhandle to the, to the city of Buffalo, looking for a new stadium to be even 100% covered by the city itself, as opposed to the guy worth $5 billion actually taking care of it. So that's interesting at the very least. But the question was also asked from Hawks. Since this is turning into a football podcast, which teams have the most to prove and why? I think we'll get more into kind of like an NFL season preview in a few weeks. I mean, we're still a month out from the start of the regular season, so we got time to talk about all this, kind of wait to see how a lot of the dominoes fall in terms of how those rosters are going to shape up. But it's an interesting situation, Deej, because right now, unfortunately, a lot of the headlines in regards to the NFL are, of course, due to the massive amount of players in the league not currently vaccinated, which might not be a subject we want to get into, because I feel like
there's just too many of them. that's why it take up 3 hours.
Whether it be Kirk Cousins saying he'd rather sit in a plexiglass box like Michael Cole in 2010, or God damn it, Cole Beasley still not knowing how to wear a mask properly. Like that's the majority of the NFL headlines. So to be honest, in terms of like double checking back, I'd have to do a little bit of research at this point. Like I've chosen actively to not pay attention to the NFL this offseason because I have better things to do than to watch man children that get paid millions of dollars voice their opinion on a subject that they know absolutely nothing about, which is very evident.
Yeah, well, I love the NFL, and I've been following it very closely. That said, let's go back to Josh Allen real quick, right?
Great player, deserves the contract, I'll say that.
I mean, okay, so there is a pretty crazy market, right, for quarterbacks in the NFL, especially very good ones. And I mean, there's the argument could be made that Josh Allen's a top 5 quarterback in the league. Like he's very good, right? So when you look at this 6-year contract for what is it, 238 or 258 million?
Yeah.
If I am not mistaken, he is making significantly more than Patrick Mahomes right now.
I think so.
I know that Mahomes makes 24.8 a year.
Let's see, March 14th, 7 years, 150 million, annual value of 21.4, apparently. So
yeah.
No, he makes more than Patrick Mahomes, which
almost double, right? Like that's like not like at least 75%. Like that's a significant.
Although there was the extension though too that was 10 years, 503 million.
That said though, that's a big contract for a guy that's had 2 good years for Josh Allen. I mean, I'm not saying he's gonna have a third bad year. It's very interesting to me to see, like, instead of like matching the Mahomes or Watson contracts, they have completely reset the market with Josh Allen.
Yeah, someone like Lamar Jackson's about to get paid a ton. Honestly, it's a similar situation to what we're seeing with defensemen in the NHL.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, you're seeing some guys get overpaid, so then everyone else is like, well, where's my cut? Like, I'm going to get paid too. And it just changes everything.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, the man does own a pistachio farm, and he is going to start selling pistachios, but he doesn't know what to brand them as. And he keeps jokingly saying he's going to call them Josh's Nuts. So
Could
it be the new Fruity Flakes?
after seeing some of the things his dad says at his fucking crazy, not even religious, faux religious sermons is what I'm going to call it, because hate to tell you, here's Toogie's take on shitty people who use the banner of religion to be shitty. Actually, in fairness, I was thinking more of Kirk Cousins there again, as opposed to Josh Allen, but. Hey, the joke still applies. Get fucking vaccinated with that multi-million-dollar fucking contract. Be a fucking better person. All right, dudes. Next question from Reds Rebels. And I'm intrigued to see if you have an opinion on this, because I do. I don't know if you follow the sport at all. I don't think you do. Your opinion on the Lionel Messi situation at Barcelona.
Are we talking about his underhanded tactics and what they used to rob Ukraine of their victory with the obvious cheating on the field?
God.
Actually, no. So I've heard like bits and pieces about this, and if I'm not mistaken, he's like kind of pulling a Tom Brady, isn't he? Like where he's just going to Tampa, but I don't know which club Tampa is in this case.
So it's
probably
the
something
opposite.
Like Crystal House Football Club Society Italia.
So it is the opposite. So Leo Messi, he's 34 at this point. He has been with Barcelona since 2000. So he was the longest tenured player. Granted, he's been on the main squad of Barcelona since 2004. And he's leaving. And it wasn't exactly his choice. Barcelona, for a long time, powerhouse. Still a powerhouse. But some interesting financial situations. They're in some deep shit. Messi has been loyal as hell to that club for as long as possible. Went to re-sign a new deal. And as they're going to put pen to paper, they're like, wait a minute. You guys changed some of the terms. And Barcelona's like, it's fine. Just sign the deal. And he's like, well, no. Why did you change the terms? We agreed to this. And he just said he's out. He's out. And from the looks of it, your version of Tampa would be, and from the looks of it, Bleacher Report just put out actually a few minutes ago that they're trying to get a deal done, that he would be going to PSG, Paris Saint-Germain, the top club in France, which, I know, it's the best. The top club in France, which has some other, they're a super squad. And this would be very interesting because Barcelona's biggest rival is Real Madrid, and a longtime member of Real Madrid, who's a gigantic scumbag, and Sergio Ramos just went there. So those two former rivals could be teammates. They have probably the best young player in the world in Kylian Mbappe on that team. Neymar, who was a teammate with Messi in Barcelona for years, is on that team. So basically, yeah, that's the Messi situation. Is that it is a player who has been incredibly loyal, that the club he's been loyal to toyed around with them one too many times, and it's an almost unthinkable situation that this incredibly loyal player is going to leave. Like, I'm trying to put it into hockey terms for someone like X-Tech. I'm trying to put this into hockey terms, so to speak, but obviously the circumstances are a little bit it would have been like if the Patriots and Tom Brady, if it was the Patriots who kind of soured that relationship in terms of contract. It'd be like if Tom Brady's like, I will continue to restructure my contract, and then the one time Tom's like, hey, can we do this? The Patriots like, oh yeah, let's go. And then Tom goes to sign the contract and they change terms. And then Brady goes to Tampa. Instead of there just being kind of a natural conclusion to the Brady Patriots run, it would essentially be like if the Patriots had fucked them over on the way out.
Yeah. I saw something like last week, and obviously, I mean, I don't really follow like European football / association soccer, whatever the hell you want to call it. But I did see something where like the main rumor was that Messi was headed to the MLS. This is actually really fascinating to me.
So that in
because he's
terms
still
of those
capable of-
rumors, obviously, like the idea of the MLS still being a retirement league is there a little bit.
Yeah, that's why it's weird, right?
Yeah.
Is PSG like also considered part of a retirement league? Because obviously
No.
Messi can still play at the highest level, you know?
No. So the French league is one of the big five in Europe. PSG pretty much consistently have won that title over the years. They actually didn't win the title this year. Lille of all teams managed to pull that off. It was a bit of an upset. But yeah, PSG have been kind of a traditional powerhouse in the French league, but they're a team that constantly gets shit on because they can't take the next step and win the Champions League, which for Deej is like all the big leagues in Europe. Not only during a season do you play your teams within your league, but then you also play the big teams from the other leagues. And PSG have never really been able to get over the hump there. So they're mocked pretty consistently because the common insult is Farmers League, because it's like you're in such a small, basically big fish in a small pond type of insult. So when it comes to the MLS idea, though, that's like why the idea is still out there of it being a retirement league. Obviously, if you're Lionel Messi, you're not going to come over until you're at the end of your career, but the benefits of you coming over and making an impact in the U.S. will greatly benefit your profile and your marketability once your career's over. So,
Yeah.
in terms of it being a retirement league, sure, but like there's no doubt in terms of like the growth of the MLS still within North America, like the spotlight the league would get, even if it is a broken down shell of himself and a Messi or a Ronaldo coming over, it would still be a huge thing.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. This is pretty fast. I mean, like, I guess good for Messi if they're messing around with him like that.
I
didn't really mean that to be humorous, and then I heard it come out of my mouth.
know you did. It's fine. We'll move on to our final viewer question. Hope that answered your question. It Rebs in terms of everything going on there. It's very fascinating to me, of course, and yeah, we'll see if he actually signs. It'd be ridiculous. Last question comes from NF Devils. Why is speed walking such an underrated Olympic sport? I was laughing so hard. The shimmying, the hip popping, the bathroom breaks. It has unlimited content. Deej, how much have you paid attention to the Olympics this year?
Like, pretty close to zero. I've been so devastated over the tug of war.
I've actually watched a decent amount, and I normally obviously enjoy the Winter Olympics more, but there's been some good stuff, whether it be the speed walking is hilarious. I mean, skateboarding being in for the first time. Dude, there was a woman who scaled a climbing wall in like 6 seconds. She looked like Spider-Man. Like, you need to watch some of these clips from this rock wall climbing event at the Olympics. It's insane. Like, literally, these people just look like they're floating up this wall. It's hilarious. And then you have stuff like the guy who ate shit doing the triple jump. It's like someone putting a banana peel right at the end. That was great. And then in terms of like, not like for the comedy, but even, you know, some of the gymnastic floor events where, you know, it's not just Simone Biles, obviously, but like, it's still fascinating to me how these women who are 5 foot
Gymnastics
nothing,
are insane.
how these women who are 5 foot nothing can end up like not 18 feet, but practically 18 feet off the ground, just off of their own natural power. Dude, synchronized diving is the shit. It's so fun to watch. So I have had way more fun watching the Summer Olympics this year, aside from the U.S. women's team blowing it. I've had a lot of fun watching the Olympics this year.
So I will say, like, certain things definitely upset me, like hearing that speed walking's an Olympic sport over tug of war, which I think, like, I mean, like, tug of war, it's the most natural contest of strength. However, I don't know if you knew this, but I am not the only person that hates speed walking or race walking. And in 1992, Bob Costas got in trouble for comparing it to a contest to see who can whisper the loudest. live on air. And I can't help but agree with him.
Bob Costas, at times, he has been, I think, rightfully labeled a curmudgeon. My favorite Bob Costas thing ever is he and Vince McMahon getting into an argument on HBO back in like 2003. There's nothing better than Vince McMahon trying to pull his bullshit outside of his own creation, and someone like Bob Costas just checking him at the door. It's the best.
I can just see the conversation going this way. We're like, Bob, you can't say that. You're going to upset some of these speed walking athletes. He's like, what are you going to do when they get upset? And he's like, I don't know, just run.
I knew that's where you were going with that. Oh, God. Well, thank you, everybody, for the questions. Again, over the next month and a half or so, we are going to be relying heavily on viewer questions, depending on how much news is out there. Because in terms of hockey topics, like we have like 3 things to talk about left because we already covered one of the contracts. And Deej, because of a bit of breaking news, we'll cover the Seattle Kraken here first, because not only did they sign Marcus Johansson, a 1-year deal at $1.5 million, which is okay. It left them $14 million to sign Vince Dunn, Dennis Cholowski, and Carson Twarynski. And Elliot Friedman has reported that Vince Dunn has signed 2 years, $4 million per. Pretty damn good deal. Not sure if he's still an RFA at the end of it, but they do end up signing Vince Dunn. So again, they have $10 million. They'll probably end up with 8 left by the time they sign Cholowski and Twarynski. So Johansson gives them some much needed forward depth. The goaltending and defense is set, but obviously you're still looking for them to maybe make an impact on the UFA market, which will lead me into our next topic. It's kind of a combined topic, but first, your thoughts on Marcus Johansson and the breaking news of Vince Dunn being signed.
Yeah, the addition of Marcus Johansson, I feel like may be the first. There's a great word for this that exists, but I feel like we have now started to turn where suddenly this team's depth chart doesn't look that bad anymore. Like this team did not look good. And now, I mean, you look at their defensive pairings on Cap Friendly, and that top pairing of Adam Larson, Mark Giordano, not bad. Second pairing, Jamie Alexiak, Vince Dunn, not bad. Third pairing, Carson Soucy, Hayden Fleury, not bad. And then, I think with Grubauer and Drieger, it's like, you mentioned this to me earlier, but I think they're set defensively and in net. And so by adding a guy like Johansson to kind of solidify that middle six, this team doesn't look too bad anymore.
The funny thing is, though, and I was going to mention this too, because the Devils landed one of the big fish free agents that was left. They signed Thomas Tatar, 2 years at $4.5. Good deal for him. Good deal for the Devils. They had a ton of money to spend. Similar situation to Seattle. They have $14 million in cap space and only need to sign Yanni Kuokkanen. So it's funny, though, because you look at these two teams, and specifically talking about the forwards, I mean, we kind of know what the Devils, they're going to try to rely on some of their younger guys. But you look at some of the UFA forwards that are still out there, and there's some talent to be signed that I'm very surprised Seattle hasn't gone for yet, or New Jersey. Now, Kyle Palmieri, again, the Islanders, he's going to go back. Derek Brassard at 33, he's not great, but he could help. I mean, I'm sorry. It's like, unless you really think Nathan Bastian or someone like that can take a step up, Derek Brassard for the bottom six isn't the worst option in the world. Don't know if Joe Thornton would be interested. Who's to say what he's going to do? But Zajac, Donato, Tyler Bozak, Chason, Filppula, Dominic Cahoon, Bobby Ryan, Eric Stahl, Alex Galchenyuk, Colton Sevier, James Neal, even on a dirt cheap deal could work. Jimmy Vesey, Nikita Gusev, Tyler Ennis, Evgeny Svechnikov. It's just surprising to me that so many of these guys, even if they're kind of bottom six filler, they're more proven bottom six filler than what Seattle especially has. Again, not that the Devils can't use some of these players as well. I think they could. I mean, I don't know if you necessarily want to run with as young of a lineup as it looks like they're going to run. But all things considered, it's a little bit surprising that Seattle hasn't made these moves. I think actually now for both teams. You talk about New Jersey's defense of Ty Smith, Dougie Hamilton, Graves, Subban, Siegenthaler, Severson. That's pretty much set. Bernier, Blackwood, and goal. The Devils might, after signing Tatar, might even be set up a little bit better. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see what these two teams do and if they go after another forward or two. I think the Devils could probably use somebody else. Seattle could use a couple of those guys.
Yeah, that Tatar signing is a lot more impactful for the Devils than I originally viewed it as. Especially, I mean, have Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes ever been healthy at the same time? You know what I mean?
Have, it hasn't
like they have. Yeah. And so when you have a guy like Thomas Tatar that like can really solidify, like they're probably going to start him on a third line role, but a guy that can just come in and step up in one of those first two lines, if one of those guys goes down, that's kind of invaluable. So I don't know. I think the Devils made some pretty solid steps forward in this offseason, and I may have kind of underrated them.
Like I said, my only concern is some of the younger talent that they have. Like they have quite a few guys who are 22, 23 or younger projected in that lineup. And I mean, again, it's the question, right? Is it the best time to just let those guys play, see what you have, or do you let them get a little bit more seasoning in the minors and maybe have limited play time? But
yeah, they got to grow out of it. They're just sitting there in their basketball shorts, just playing Fortnite and eating hoagies. They just got to grow out of it.
And Deej, we referenced this earlier, kind of our final talking point today. And I think you guys can see why we wanted to rely on viewer questions, because there's only so much you can kind of talk about these signings again. Obviously, we had kind of talked about like, oh, well, if this happens, what if? So, but Darnell Nurse, it's not 100% official. Cap Friendly, actually, no, Cap Friendly has it now, so it is 100% official. Darnell Nurse has signed an 8-year extension at $9.25 million per. Now, he was already making $5 million a season. The extension kicks in next year, just like Seth Jones' new deal with Chicago. So basically, all of Koskinen's $4 million will transfer over to Darnell Nurse starting next year. Deej, the Oilers' defense for 2022-23, so next season, not this upcoming one, but next season, you are looking at Darnell Nurse making over $9 million. Duncan Keith at $5.5 million. Tyson Barrie at $4.5 million. Clefbaum, we don't know if he'll play, but 4.1, and Cody Ceci at 3.25. Is that the defense you want to be paying that much money to?
No, but it's fine because they have Devin Shore. Like his ability at forward. Like, I don't know what people talk to Ken Holland about, but my God, do I have some ideas to pitch him. This guy's just writing checks for anything.
We talked about it a lot last week in terms of our Western Conference breakdown. And again, if you guys missed it, we also broke down the Eastern Conference signings up to that point. The Oilers are in a bad spot. Like the concept of whether or not Ken Holland is cooked as a GM, the concept, the thought, call it what you will. I don't have any more confidence here. And yes, the idea of did the Seth Jones contract in a way screw things up? I mean, I think it did. Does Zach Werenski get 9.5 if Seth Jones doesn't get the $9 million he did? I don't think so. Does Darnell Nurse get over $9 million if Seth Jones doesn't get $9 million? I don't think so. You know, Cale Makar might have been pushing closer to $9 million, but out of everybody we mentioned, it's Cale Makar. He's very much deserving of that. And it's just very interesting that we're seeing a spike in the prices amongst defenders here, seemingly off the back of one contract. Because as I look back at some of the other signings that we've had that have been big money signings, I mean, Darnell Nurse got $74 million. Dougie Hamilton, I mean, $63 million in total. Like, Dougie Hamilton got $9 million too. I mean, you can't look at the Miro Heiskanen contract to be the one that screwed. Although Miro Heiskanen getting almost $8.5 million just before the Jones contract kicked in. or the deal was signed in the extension. I mean, maybe it wasn't to Seth Jones. I don't know if Miro Heiskanen necessarily deserved over $8 million. But in terms of like crazy contracts, like Pietrangelo almost got 9 on an extension or on the free agent deal with Vegas, which that's not too crazy, I would say. I'm just trying to see like what sparked this. And maybe it was the Pietrangelo deal, but I'm kind of leaning towards it being more of the Heiskanen deal than anything else that kind of skewed the market here, because looking at some of these big signings over the past few years, I mean, Jeff Petry's making 6. That didn't skew the market. Roman Josi ended up getting 9.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a bit much. I mean, I guess maybe Justin Falk making 6.5. Thomas Chabot's making 8. Jared Spurgeon 7.5. But like, I'd consider Miro Heiskanen somewhat closer to like what Provorov was when he got his deal, and Provorov only got 6.75, whereas Heiskanen got 8.4. So I don't know what the turning point was. I don't know if you can necessarily say it was the Darnell Nurse contract, but some of those deals, maybe even before Pietrangelo, Josi, not saying he doesn't deserve to be a $9 million defender, especially now by the standard, but it's almost like these kind of seeds were planted in 2019 and 2020, and now all of a sudden, like, here we are. Like, this is the standard now. And it's excessive, maybe?
Well, so I also think, like, Darnell Nurse exists at a crux of two very bizarre trends in the NHL right now, right? Where we have GMs overvaluing number one defensemen that might not necessarily be number one on every single team in the league. You know what I mean?
Fair.
Guys that aren't necessarily top 30 defensemen getting paid like they're franchise definers. But also, not to say Darnell Nurse is bad. I would say 25, 26 teams in the league, he's a top pairing defenseman. That said, though, you also get this weird trend of genetics being overly valued in the NHL right now, like sons, brothers, all of that. And so with Darnell Nurse, you can't overlook that his sister Kaya, currently at the 2020 Summer Olympics for the women's basketball. You can't overlook that his cousin Sarah is on the women's national Canadian team. You can't overlook that his dad played for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. You can't overlook that his uncle was the quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles. This family just breeds athletes, and somebody showed Ken Holland a PowerPoint. And here we are.
It's as logical of a reason as I think I've heard yet for some of these moves. Ken Holland, though, to that topic again, Darnell Nurse, very good offensive defenseman. That's a lot to bank on him. But Ken Holland has been in the NHL, Deej, since he was 31 years old. He is now 65. On one hand, that experience is great. But on the other, I mean, there's a time where, a job like that, your era has, it's come and gone. And in the 2 years, 2 months, and 30 days, as of today's recording, that Ken Holland has been GM and president of hockey ops at the Edmonton Oilers, have they gotten significantly better?
No, and I think the brevity of Ken Holland's Wikipedia article basically sums up everything, where it's just like Edmonton Oilers. On May 7th, the Edmonton Oilers named Holland general manager. That's it. That's everything he's done for the Oilers that Wikipedia has deemed significant. And I mean, I don't think I can name a good move he's made. He's made a bunch of moves that are average or slightly above average, but he hasn't made a move where I'm like, that guy. Like, at this point, I'm just going to say, like, the Dutch don't want him anymore. We're abandoning Ken Holland.
I mean, I'm looking at this Oilers roster from 2019-20, which would have been Ken Holland's first season with the team, there hasn't been a ton of turnover, and in terms of like how much better they are depth wise, like okay, they don't have Andreas Athanasiou, but you have like Pugliari, Yamamoto, Fogle, so that offsets, I guess. Like Josh Archibald's still there. You got rid of Ethan Bear. Matt Benning's gone on defense, but it's looking like you're going to be playing Chris Russell, and you also have like Cody Ceci on the team, and then some unproven guys like Evan Bouchard, who's still young. Tyler Benson's still kicking around in the organization. Colby Cave was on that roster. RIP there. Like they don't have Alex Chase on anymore. But again, like you have like, not that he's a center, but along the lines of, again, like a Fogle, a Turris, like, a middle six guy for Alex Chase on, even though I think that was the good year for him. Then you had like your Tyler Ennis's, your Sam Gagne's, Marcus Granlund at forward. But you look at who they have now, and it's like, again, like, okay, you're a bit younger with like Pugliarvi, Yamamoto, but like you still have like Devin Shore, Derek Ryan, like the offense. If it's gotten better, it's marginally, and they've gotten younger. So you could say that's for the best. Defensively, Bear, Benning, Mike Green, Caleb Jones, Clefbaum, Lagesson, Larson, Manning, Nurse, Persson, Russell. They iced a lot of defenders that year. Are they that much better now that it's like, cool, you have Barry and Keith and Cece? Are you that much better than when you had, again, like a healthy Clefbaum, a healthy Adam Larson? Like you're not that much better, if at all. And then the goaltending is still the exact same fucking thing of Koskinen and Smith. What exactly has Ken Holland done in the past 2 years? I see lateral moves, if not minute improvements. And in the meantime, Connor McDavid is now 24 years old. You have made the playoffs twice. 3 times, excuse me, and made it out of the first round once. Connor McDavid has 21 playoff games in his career so far. That is tragic. I just don't see... who knows? Again, this isn't a shot at Oilers fans, obviously. I'm sure they share the same concerns, at least the reasonable ones. It's just, I'm frustrated for Oilers fans because, I mean, again, maybe this works. Maybe the Oilers win the Stanley Cup, and a year from now we're being like, hey, remember how wrong we were? But I look at this roster, I don't see that drastic improvement, and I like, what are you doing? And then again, Darnell Nurse, based off of what we're seeing other people being paid, is it an overpayment? Sure. How drastic of an overpayment is it? Tough to say, I guess. But again, like all you're doing now is taking, like I said, like Darnell Nurse is making $5.6 million this season. Koskinen counts for 4.5 against the cap. So basically the vast majority of that Koskinen contract is going to that Darnell Nurse extension minus $850,000. What are you going to do with that $850,000? And right now they're still in overage. They're $2 million over the cap. Clefbaum's not on LTIR yet, so you'll end up having the money to re-sign Yamamoto. But then you don't really have any money to sign anybody. I don't like. They're not better unless Duncan Keith turns back the clock, unless Tyson Barrie and Darnell Nurse can figure out how to play defense, and unless Cody Ceci figured out enough in Pittsburgh that he could now manage top 4 minutes instead of sheltered minutes like on the third pair.
Yeah, something tells me they're going to have about $12.5 million to sign players in free cap space next year. After Connor requests a trade. Is there an ultimatum if they fail to make it out of the first round? Because we always talk about Toronto failing to make it out of the first round. If the Oilers fail to make it out of the first round, does Connor McDavid say it's me or Ken Holland? Look, he won't, because he's not that type of guy.
But in theory, that's what it would have to be, right? It's like if you're going to keep Ken Holland, Connor McDavid should absolutely ask for a trade out of there because it's just not going to happen.
I don't know how Ken Holland leaving helps when $6 million is being given to Warren Fogle and Zach Cassian until 24-25. You know what I mean?
The best time to fix that problem was 2 years ago, but the second best time is now.
Or last month when Arizona was just like, give us all your shit. Give it to us.
They actively signed Warren Fogle to that deal, which again, not that Warren Fogle's a terrible player, but you gave up Ethan Bear to acquire an RFA. So obviously the RFA has all the power when it comes to the negotiations in that deal because, hey, you're the one that acquired my rights. It's just, I don't get it. And I don't think we're supposed to get it because it's illogical and it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just gonna make me faint. It's so easy. It's like the easiest math problem. And we're watching this guy that never put higher than an 848 save percentage in the NHL absolutely destroy a team. It's like.
So before Deej faints, I suppose we should get on out of here. Let Deej, stand in front of a fan for a minute, cool down, get some water. Deej, we'll be back next week with hopefully a little bit more to talk about, although I did very much enjoy the viewer questions. And we'll see if somehow Ken Holland pulls a rabbit out of the hat to make Oilers fans have some sort of optimism. I mean, I don't know, maybe some Oilers fans do, but I don't see it.
Yeah, catch us next week as I count down the 5 greatest blanket forts I've ever built, combined with how many pumps I could fit into a super soaker before the tank exploded.
Again, big shout out to Manscaped for sponsoring the show. We will see you all next week. Goodbye.